As Gary Rowett looks ahead to a tough trip to Middlesbrough, the Blues boss admits Huddersfield's early goal on Saturday dented the confidence of everyone inside the stadium.
It was a little sense of irony that we worked incredibly hard all week. Felt we had a really competitive and good weeks. Training really productive. Felt as though we needed to do something different, and I think that's, I think in some ways the easy thing's to do the same thing, but we wanted to be a little bit braver and play on the front foot and see if we can get the crowd going. Ironically, it was probably the worst start I've ever had in a game, where 25 seconds the goal went in. A little bit of fortune with the goal, a little bit of poor decision making on some of the players' point of view. And you could almost see the confidence sort of evaporate from the whole stadium and the players within that 25 seconds. So it was a difficult one. And I think this week really we've almost had to try and kind of put those things to one side now. I said it probably 2 weeks ago. I said I think we're in for a challenging month. Perhaps didn't feel it'd be quite as challenging as it has been. But I think that's what it is. We've got to get through this period. We've got to try and get back to what we do best. We've got to try and get some good results. And we've been very positive this week in trying to do that. I said before that sometimes you go on really good runs. And we went 4 games and won all 4 games not long ago. Didn't get too excited about it, because I think you always realise as a manager that it might be one of these little periods around the corner. So certainly a testing period in many ways, but that's what tests are for. Tests are, you roll your sleeves up and you see if you can answer the test. Simple as that.
Despite Blues' recent results, the manager still believes his side have done brilliantly so far this season.
Like you say, to be 1 point off the playoffs. I've had to share that with the players this week. I think we tend to have a meeting every now and then based on, listen, this is where we are, let's be realistic. And then I never like to put a limit on our achievements, but I think at 6th, when you look at the 5 teams above us and their financial power, I think I've probably been guilty of saying to the players, how do we get in that mix, how do we get in that bunch, where the reality is probably I should have been thanking them and rewarding them for getting us to 6th and saying, listen, we're doing brilliant here, and just staying relaxed and accepting them for what they are as players, rather than perhaps push them to levels that some of the players I think have found certainly a challenge.
On a positive note for Blues, all being well, Rowett can expect to have his injured trio back for Boxing Day.
I don't want to be I don't want to put too much of a time scale on it, because as we know sometimes it's dependent on a lot of things, but if everything goes perfectly, if everything goes to plan, then Robbo, Cots and Clayton might all be available for the Sheff Wednesday game, which at the moment feels like a year away, let alone 2 weeks away.
Having been unavailable last week, Blues loanee James Vaughan is set to feature in Saturday's fixture, possibly alongside another graduate from the Blues Academy.
Vaughan is probably the most likely. There might be 1 or 2 positions behind that depending on players' fitness and 1 or 2 ways of going, but I think we're going to try and get back to consistency and get back to that consistent team selection. But I think certainly the experience of Vaughan, he would have played last week against Huddersfield. I think Brock's done okay and done what we've expected, but obviously the expectation for us was to never have to rely on him for 4, 5, 6 games in a row, because he's a young player learning his trade in a new league. So I think certainly Vaughan will come back into the reckoning. Charlie Adams will travel with the first team this weekend, whether that's as 19th man or whether that's as part of the 18, we'll know after training, but he's done really well in training, and he's another really good sort of story that's come out of this season, that with a tight squad some of the youngsters get opportunities, and I'm sure that'll bode well for the season.
With a trip to the Riverside on Saturday, Rowett believes playing away from home won't do his side any harm.
I think there's always, the ironic thing for me is there's always pressure. There's always pressure. If you win 4 games on the spin like we did, you think, can we keep this run going? You turn up to the games exactly the same, desperate to win it, a little bit nervous of what's going to happen. Perhaps when you've won 4 on a spin, you feel a little bit more confident about your team putting in a consistent performance. Maybe when you've lost 3 on the spin, you're perhaps a little bit more unsure of how they're going to perform, and that's just the reality of it. But I think, like you say, 2 away games coming up, you put the Preston one in that as well. I don't think we'll do us any harm. We can perhaps go to both of those games, have a bit less to fear, just try and relax a little bit. I think be hard to play against, which has always been a hallmark of us over the last 13 months, and I think that's something. That's probably the one thing I don't like about the team at the minute. Over the last 3 or 4 games, if we've started to become a little bit too easy to play against, and I don't mean that in a, I think those margins are small, but I think that's creeping in, and certainly we've got to get out of that. And I think if you fight hard and work incredibly hard, then you'll get results. It's as simple as that. So we're looking forward to the game. Be really positive about the game as we always are, and we're aware of this little recent run of form, but at the same time, I think we're confident that we can get back to winning ways.